In today's lecture, I will talk about one very interesting type of endgame, which actually can occur after already like 7 moves only, which is Anti-Grunfeld Endgame, which usually is considered as pretty harmless for black. Generally, black doesn't mind, going for such endgame. But there have been some recent developments that I wanted to share with you guys in this opening, in this endgame pretty much. That's why I brought it to today's lecture, Insane in the Endgame, because pretty much it's just an endgame which basically starts only after move number 7. So and there have been recently games between Teimour Radjabov and Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, and I would like to basically talk about those games, mostly about one of them. However, I believe that the mod, basically what will happen in this game will sort of challenge what is the theoretical, let's say, state of this opening, because normally it was considered as totally harmless for black. However, those games proved, because Teimour Radjabov won twice against MVL, and he proved that there could be posed certain problems to black, and they are not entirely easy to resolve. So let's get started. And this opening starts, this endgame sort of starts with knight f3, knight f6, c4, g6, knight c3, d5, c takes d5, knight takes d5, and right now white can start with move either h4, followed by, if black plays h6, then e4, and knight c3, d takes c3, or b takes c3, but this leads to different type of position. D takes c3, and the such endgame arises. Or black can do here black can play here move bishop g7, e4, knight takes c3, d takes c3, queen takes d1, queen takes d1, and this is the endgame I played also with black pieces myself. Or go for the classical, let's say, approach, basically immediate after knight takes d5, immediate e4. Let me just double check everything is visible. Okay, if immediate e4, knight takes c3, d takes c3, and queen takes d1, king takes d1. So this endgame has been always, at least I consider it always, as totally harmless, not causing any problems here for black whatsoever. And I will say even that I was considering that this is type of the variation that white wants to play if white wants to just to make a draw, and that's it. This is what I was always thinking. I was pretty much nearly always lazy to analyze this, in detail. However, there are, recent games, especially by, Teimour Radjabov, who is one of the best chess players in the world, made me kind of like reconsider. Maybe there are some ideas here for white that could be causing some problems for black, and my discoveries are pretty interesting, I believe. So let me share it with you guys. And here, black in the one of the games followed f6, and this move is by far, I was considering always this move as the best move in this position, as the best move. In the other game, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave tried move knight d7, instead of f6. Started knight d7, and but I will mostly focus on the game after f6. Because this personally, I always consider move f6 also as the best move in this position. And the idea of f6 is very straightforward. It's basically to move e5, fight for the center, brings pawn to the center, and have this kind of symmetrical position in which unlikely anything can happen. And I also played myself in, I think, year 2015, and I managed to win a nice game with black. So even this kind of like shows that I was sort of like, before those games happened, I was sort of like in favor of this line with black, and I kind of liked it. Here, however, Teimour Radjabov played move h4, which is sort of modern approach here. And it's totally in style of, LC0, Alpha0, and so on, these neural engines. h4, basically, white tries to create some pressure on the king side. And the idea is to play, of course, move h5. And if we can basically create some or provoke some weaknesses, maybe weaken some squares, this definitely would be great news for white. So after h4, the theory suggests two moves here for black. One move is h5, and one move is e5. Personally, I think that e5 is better move. h5 I don't like. h5 I simply don't like. And let's see why. But first, let me talk, because h5 is what MVL chose in this game. However, and I would like to discuss move e5 first, because this, I think, this is what I wanted to play myself, and I still think that's basically better move. But things, even though positions seems to be pretty equal, there is still some pressure that white can exert here on black, and it is not entirely trivial to how to play this. So idea of a5 is basically to meet h5, which of course h4 was with idea of h5, to meet this move h5 move g5, and trying to block the king side. This, on the other hand, creates a quick square on f5, which white can try to exploit, and also g4. Basically, white's main idea right now is to basically trade light square bishops, and jump with the knight to g4 or f5 squares, and have this kind of in this such structure, white should be better in general, pretty much everywhere. Still, black is very solid, no question about it, but still, I believe that if this bishops will be traded and knight will come to those squares, white should have better chances. And here Magnus Carlsen played against MVL himself in 2020, late 2020, December, I think, some of those tournaments like Air Things or Skilling, I'm not exactly sure, don't remember right now, but I saw this game. Magnus played with right now move, not bishop e3, but knight h2. Magnus played with knight h2. And the idea of knight h2 is very straightforward. Please basically play bishop e2, play bishop g4, and go for such endgame here. Basically, apply this plan of train the light square bishops. So after knight h2, in the game of Magnus followed, I think, not bishop c5, followed bishop e6, followed bishop e6, and right now Magnus got very nice advantage and stable advantage of bishop e2, knight d7, bishop g4, following the plan of trading those light square bishops. King f7, logical. Also logical is to play king e2. Not only move, but very pretty logical. Knight c5, we can just trade. King takes e6, and f3. And the point is that white has better pawn structure, and while black bishop on f8 is not a good bishop, white knight comes to g4. And presumably at some point in the future to f5. Black has pretty much very little counterplay, and white can try to push it for very long time. So in the game followed knight a4, rook b1, bishop e7, bishop d2, rook d8, rook d1, all normal moves. But white slowly, in general, this type of positions you have to sort of apply rule of do not hurry, and gradually improve the position. And this is exactly what Magnus is doing here. Knight b6, knight g4, bringing the knight, rook d7, bishop e3, rook takes d1, takes, knight c8. Of course, if white would be allowed to take on b6, this would certainly, give white better chances, because then on the light squares, the white knight will be pretty much unbeatable. Right now, black tried to keep the knights on the board and always have an idea of basically trading those knights and try to save the game in this way. And this is exactly how MVL managed to defend this against Magnus in their game. However, here, here Magnus played knight h6, and I think this move is a little bit premature, because after b6, knight f5, knight d6, essentially what happens is that those knights are getting traded. And if those knights are getting traded, then rooks are going to be likely traded on the d file, and position simplifies and simplifies more and more, and eventually black simply managed to save it. So after, let's say, this, king f7, rook d7, rook got out, rook d8 for trading rooks. Perhaps it was better to keep the rooks on the board, but anyway, this followed, and here basically it was too little to prove anything, and the game ended with a draw. Between this is the game Magnus Carlsen versus MVL. Coming back here to move knight c8, this is what happened in this game. Here in this type of position, because I think it's a nice example, because this similar type of position can happen with different move orders, different, let's say, I don't know, scenarios of what both sides do. But you know, so with the endgame, with such, let's say, material balance, one pair of rooks traded, light square bishops traded, and now white controlling, let's say, light squares on the king side, could be quite common in such endgame, in such type of opening. That's why it's, I think, good to know how to react, how to continue here with white. And what white needs to do in general is basically beginning creating second weakness on the queen side this time. So by slowly advancing pawns on the queen side, maybe slowly putting some pressure there, white can probably do it. Of course, with perfect defense, black should be able to hold it. It's still all like, it's not like black's position is lost or something, but it's clearly unpleasant to play. So I would consider maybe, not knight h6, this is what Magnus did, I would consider playing maybe a4, let's say knight d6, maybe move king d3, maybe bring this king to c2 at first, or d8 king c2. And maybe a wise idea would maybe to play bishop c5 at some point, maybe trade these bishops. If, you know, maybe you can play move b4 at some point, king b3, slowly pushing those pawns forward on the queen side, and gradually improving the position and putting more and more pressure on black here. And still, I believe with correct defense it should be holdable, but it's definitely, you know, white definitely has some chances to win this. So having talked about that, let's move back a little bit to what I think after knight h2 black should be doing. Black should play move bishop c5. Basically, in this type of positions, this type of endgame, usually this bishop from c8 needs to be quickly developed to c5, if only given a chance. And this is exactly what MVL should have played here, bishop c5. Bishop c5, and the idea is basically attack pawn on f2. Nothing more straightforward than that. Just attack pawn on f2. And okay, another idea is basically stop bishop e3 and basically, you know, keep our bishop active. And right now, white should play against bishop e2. And the point is that bishop takes f2 right now. It doesn't lead to anything good for black, because after bishop takes f2, knight g4 takes. It's pretty much forced, because otherwise, if bishop retreats somewhere, knight takes f6 is simply completely lost for black. Because pawn g5 falls. So black has to take. White takes with the bishop, and let's say knight d7, and let's say right now we can start with king e2, but also we can play move b4 followed by king e2, making sure this bishop doesn't come back to c5. And here white has big advantage. The lack of the pawn, you pretty much cannot even feel it while the black has extra pawn, because bishop on g4 is such a dominant bishop, such a dominant piece, that it's pretty much the extra pawn is for black is irrelevant in this position. White has big advantage, definitely. So black cannot take the pawn on f2. If black cannot take pawn on f2, black should play move king e7. And that's what black should generally try to play for. And right now bishop takes f2 already could be a threat. So white should, you know, waste the tempo for move king e1, and you know, try to defend this pawn on f2, because already pawn on f6 was protected. So let's say bishop g4 would be pretty much not good because of bishop takes f2, and black is simply wins a pawn and black is better. So this wouldn't be, therefore white has to play with king e1, try to defend this pawn. And right now, good strategy for black is basically to keep those, try to try to avoid trading those light square bishops, and that's why bishop e6 is a very good move right now for black, in my opinion. Idea of bishop e6 is to basically meet bishop g4 with simply bishop f7. And I think in this type of position, black should generally hold with those bishops on the board. Even if white knight comes to f5 like this, okay, and so what? It will just come to f5, but it will not create any threats. Black will just play rook d8, knight will come to f5, and let's say black will just play king f8, and there is no pretty much follow-up. Pretty much no follow-up. In the meantime, black will begin counterplay on the queen side. With bishop on preserving this bishop on f7 generates the significant counterplay on the queen side for black, because there will be ideas of bishop c4, there will be ideas of basically playing a5, a4. So let's just play some few random moves. Let's say knight f1 followed by knight g3, knight f5. We can start with rook d8, or we can start also with a5, it doesn't matter much. Let's say knight g3, rook d8, knight f5, king f8. And yeah, like for instance, right now black can quickly go for some counterplay on the queen side. Idea of playing for f4 is definitely interesting, but whenever white plays move rook f1, there will be also bishop c4. So it's not easy to make that really work. And I think that in this type of position, I simply don't think that white has sufficient, let's say, play here. Of course, white could be still slightly better, but it's pretty much on the balancing on, it's close to nothing in my opinion, because the bishop on f7 grants significant, let's say, counterplay. That's why I believe that this is simply good position for black. And this is what I think MVL should have played for, should have gone for. Instead, MVL chose move h5. Okay, here coming back to this position, I thought that maybe a little bit better try for white is to play move bishop e3. And the idea of bishop e3 is basically to stop bishop c5 and go for the same plan if possible, but without allowing move bishop c5, which was annoying in the previous lines. So perhaps it's a better try, but still knight d7, knight h2, similar plan, right? But right now again we can play move like bishop c5, for instance, and this again possibly trades the bishops, and again king e7 follows. Black is pretty much very solid here. I don't think, even if white is maybe slightly better, I do not think that there is too much reason to worry here with black. However, one of the very important idea here to note is basically that black generally should trade those dark square bishops, because with those dark square bishops on the board, this bishop, let's say, just as we discussed in Magnus versus MVL, I'll just bring this position again. Yeah, like, okay, a little bit later, like let's say here. So in all those type of positions, this bishop on e7 will be always weak, will always be a sort of a problem. While if we could trade it, it will basically, we are trading our bad bishop with black for our white's good bishop. Therefore, this should be generally favorable to black, and should give black a decent game. And idea of here coming back again to this bishop e3 move, knight d7, let's say knight h2 and bishop c5 is exactly to avoid such positions as in MVL, Magnus MVL game. And here again, after knight g4, we can play even a5, followed by king e7 at some point. There is no any issues with knight takes f6, which is important to note, because after this, even though white has pair of bishops, black knight is very active. This dark square bishop is restricted a lot. It's after bishop e3, rook f8 for attacking pawn f2, let's say king e1 and h6. This bishop is pretty much restricted, and I think black could be even better here, because even it's very likely light square bishops will be traded, and this bishop will be still restricted, and pawns, let's say pawn on h5, could potentially be object of the attack by this knight from f6, let's say, maybe in the future. So I think in this type of position, black doesn't take any risk, only black will be better. And also knight takes, bishop takes fc5, knight f6 also doesn't work because of king f7, and knight d5, knight takes e4 simply wins back the pawn, and again position is pretty much around equal. So I think that this was what black should have gone for. Still, white should be somewhat, maybe tiny bit better here. Some of moves like maybe, I don't know, bishop c4, I guess, slowly trying to develop the pieces and so on. But again, moves like after, let's say, king e7, I don't really see any problems here for black. Okay, the only weakness pawn f6 is covered. Knight is not really coming to f5 because we still keep our bishop. The bishops are not traded, so this is a very important thing right now. The light square bishops are not traded, so f5 square is not really such a big problem. And here I believe black shouldn't have too many problems to keep the game balanced. However, of course, white can try. White can definitely try. So let's move back to what happened in the game, because this is pretty much what I wanted to cover on move e5, which I think is the correct play here for black. Here in the game, however, happened h5, and this is what MVL already played a few times, but he also played e5, and he played e5 recently, so I'm a little bit confused why he didn't go for e5 again, especially that, you know, improving on the game against Magnus, I think it was possible, like what we discussed, let's say after knight h2, bishop c5 improves basically on MVL's choice of, I think, knight d7, right? He played, no, bishop e6, he played bishop e6. So bishop c5 improves on bishop e6, and it's pretty straightforward improvement. I don't know, maybe we'll see in next games. However, in this game, MVL chose h5, after which he already struggled in the past. For instance, there was a game, Rapport MVL from 2015, and Maxime Vachier-Lagrave struggled in this game too. So let's see what happened. Right now, black, of course, wants to play right now e5. If black plays h5 and then e5, then of course there will be even better version of, let's say, regular position after we discuss after h5, a5, h5, g5. Because here at least what black has control, black can fight for the control over the light squares on f5, g4. After let's say h4, h5, if black can get to, let's say after kings to e5, this will be simply great for black. This is exactly what black hopes for in this type of endgame, to basically do not allow white to you know, provoke any weaknesses on the light squares here, or on the dark squares, and you know, play such position, and which is pretty equal. Therefore, in this position, white Teimour Radjabov with white play move, very strong move e5. Of course, this is all still theory, but I really think that this line is kind of suspicious to black. And in the game, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave had really big problems facing this line, facing this move. Knight c6 seems logical. Bishop d3 logical to attack on f7, and right now king f7 also logical. If bishop f5, it was possible, but after, let's say, takes, rook e1, we will discuss very similar position soon, because pretty much the same idea MVL chose against Rapport. So we'll talk about it in a second. So bishop d3, king f7, rook e1. Supporting pawn on e5 makes perfect sense. And right now, black has two possibilities. One idea is bishop g4, one idea is bishop f5. So which one is better? Bishop g4 is more accurate, because after bishop f5, this is the game between Rapport versus MVL. And here I believe white has big advantage, like really big advantage, because bishop f5, okay, tries to simplify the position, which is very logical. However, after takes, white can play a very strong move, e6. And basically, right now, with pawn on e6, development of this bishop on f8 is pretty much restricted. Can only to go to h6. Also, black pawn structure is very bad, I would say. Pawn f5 is a weakness. Pawn c7 could be also a weakness. King has to go to g6, but right now white has only, I think, maybe there is more moves, but there is one specifically very strong move that white needs to play to prove the advantage. And this move is obviously move knight to g1. A very nice idea in this endgame. Insane idea, I would say, even going with the topic of this lecture. Basically, knight goes to the initial square to basically to find its path towards f4. And if this knight lands on a 4 square, let's say in this way or this way, either e2, knight f4 or knight h3, knight f4, this will be extremely dangerous to black. You know, pretty much it will not be playable. So in the game followed bishop h6, knight e2 followed, rook d8, okay, king c2, logical, rook d6, and right now Rapport made a mistake. Richard Rapport made a mistake because he played knight f4, and after which bishop takes f4, bishop takes f4. Even though it seems very tempting to play like this, but suddenly, you know, it seems like white is just winning because, you know, rook is under attack, pawn 7 is like pinned with the rook, and seemingly white simply wins the pawn, right? However, after knight d5, position pretty much simplifies very immediately to equal rook endgame. Rook bishop takes, rook d8, rook e2, king f6. Black simply takes back the pawn on e6, and there are no issues whatsoever anymore. That's why knight f4 here was a huge mistake here by Richard Rapport, and a missed chance to win the game, because simply bishop takes h6 followed by king at h6, knight f4 is totally dominating. It's simply dominating. There is black's position is on the verge of being simply lost strategically. Pawn on e6 is well guarded. Pawn on h5 is a weakness. Knight on f4 is extremely strong. King on h6 will be forced forever to defend his pawn on h5. On the queen side, white will just develop, you know, some second weakness, create second weakness, and black's defense will eventually has to pretty much collapse. So after knight d5, for instance, rook d1, you know, even rook trade is good for white here. This position is simply awful here. Perhaps Richard Rapport didn't. I'm sure he's seen this, but perhaps he thought that after, you know, bishop f4, he just wins the pawn, or like underestimated knight d5, or I don't know what happened. But here, basically, there is no doubt that white is clearly better. So bishop f5, therefore, in this position is not a good move. Bishop therefore, white should play with bishop g4, try to pin. We should run away with the king c2. And right now, rook d8 is the main move. However, okay, one thing to know. Okay, there are two things that I wanted to know in this position. What happens after bishop takes f3? After bishop f3, white has to play move, I think, e6 in order to you know, protect the pawn. And suddenly king has nowhere really to go, because if king goes to g7, this king will be staying in the way of development of this f8 bishop. After, let's say, we take back, the king is disturbing the bishop to get developed quickly, and white has simply huge advantage. And if king g8, of course, is possible, but this doesn't resolve any problems because pawn on g6 is hanging. Yes, black can play move f5, but, you know, this already, you know, creates some weaknesses, and definitely it's, let's say, after f5, even I can play move bishop f4, hitting it with the pawn on c7. At least that. There's also a move like rook g1. There is, I can also begin playing on the queen side as well. There are a bunch of possibilities. Perhaps this is something black should do, but anyway, this position is, you know, pretty shaky. That's why bishop takes the 3 is a bad move. And however, what I think is a decent move for black right now is knight takes e5. So knight takes e5 seemingly, just goes voluntarily for bad pawn structure with knight takes e5, takes rook takes e5. However, if the closer look at this position makes me think that things are far from clear. Let's say if black plays e6, yes, white has better pawn structure, but there's only one weakness. There's only one pawn on e6 that is potentially weak, and so far, very well guarded by the light square bishop. And black will want to play with bishop f5, trying to trade with the light square bishops. For moves like bishop d6, rook e8, maybe rook somewhere, maybe this rook somewhere to d8, maybe to b8. I don't know exactly. Followed by b5. I'm not exactly sure what plan would white try to implement in this position in order to prove the advantage. I still think that white is slightly better. Let's say after bishop g5, bishop d6, rook e1 back, bishop f5. Again, this is a good trade for black. If let's say bishop takes f5, either pawn takes on f5 with just total equality. So white should play rook a d1. But here black is pretty solid, I believe. Just b5. I'm not sure what white is doing. Everything nicely placed. But okay, king c1, just rook b8, and I am not exactly sure what is here white's plan. I do not see it. I do not know. Perhaps move something like f3, g4 at some point, but this is also a long plan because so far I will just, if this happens, I will simply capture the pawn and that's it. And yeah, like, I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what kind of plan can white pursue here. Black is pretty solid, I would say. Still, white can definitely try moves like maybe bishop e4 followed by f3, double the rooks on the e file. All of this could be tried, but with correct play, I feel like black should have enough resources to maintain the balance. But I believe this is something what black should have gone for here. Even though this move, has never been played. Only in this position of the king c2, knight e5 was never played, but only move that has been played was rook d8, and this is what MVL went for. But here in this position, I think that Teimour Radjabov made a mistake, because in this position, bishop f4 was Teimour's choice. And this move, I think, spoils, if not entire advantage, then at least big part of the advantage. And the point is, right after bishop f4, bishop h6, I'll come back into this position before bishop f4 in a moment. But let's see and let's understand it first why bishop f4 is a mistake, in my opinion. Because right after bishop h6, I think that black is in time to solve all the opening problems due to tactical, let's say, reasons. The thing is, it's very similar to after, let's say, bishop g3. After bishop h6, sorry, we lost the tempo, right? Because bishop h6 could have been, let's say, if here black plays bishop h6, okay, at least rook is on the 8. So this kind of like is not something that black normally wants to do. Black wants to wait for bishop f4 to play bishop h6. That's why rook d8, bishop f4, bishop h6 has been played. So here, if bishop takes h6, rook takes h6, pawn on e5 is sort of object of the attack right now. So makes sense maybe to play bishop e4, try to eliminate knight from c6. And also, if bishop takes f3, then white will be slightly better after bishop takes f3. For instance, also e6 could be, very testing as well. But after even bishop takes f3 could be, some edge. But e6 I think is even more testing than other moves. And after this, let's say this position should be better for white because bishop is better than the knight, and the pawn on e6 is in this position. Bishop is better than knight because for this pressure, this diagonal, and pawn on e6 is rather strong rather than a weak because maybe you can play rook d1, rook d7 sometimes. So it is, I think white is better here. So, and of course, another thing, black cannot take because bishop takes c6, and we take the check, discovery check, and then we take back the bishop and we retain extra piece. So here black should play after bishop e4, bishop f5. So seemingly this resembles what happened in the game Rapport MVL, right? However, there's a huge difference. After bishop takes f5, g takes f5, e6, king g6. You know, normally we would like already to have our knight, let's say, on e2, or let's say on g1, to play knight 1 knight e2 and then knight f4, basically to make, you know, to bring this knight to f4. Because if we do not bring this knight to f4, I do not think that black-white has simply anything here. Because after knight g1, black can play move f4, very strong move, and suddenly king comes to f5. Let's say knight h3, king f5. Pawn on e6 is a weakness right now because we can play knight e5 and surround this pawn on e6. Also, rook g6 could be played. King on f5 is very active. I think black can simply, if not better already, black can quickly, or at least has a chance to simply take over pretty soon. That's why white is simply not in time to install this knight on f4 because of f4 move. Yeah, that's the main difference here. And even if bishop g3, this is what Teimour Radjabov played. Right now, black has actually two paths to equality, but both of them start with bishop takes f3. No, king g7 was a very mysterious move by MVL, which I do not understand. Instead, simple bishop takes f3 leads to immediate equality in very simple way. Because after g takes f3, black can play either knight takes e5 and just, you know, trade everything. Here, of course, black has no any issues. Let's say on rook d6, for instance, securing on the pawn on g6, maybe rook f6 idea, maybe bishop f4, e5. No issues here whatsoever. And also a possibility to play move f5, which is, let's say, a little bit more ambitious, I guess, because right now white should play move f4 in order not to, you know, black threatens f4 sort of in order to kind of like trap this bishop on this, more like close this bishop or like lock this bishop on h2. So I should play move f4 and then right now simply e6, and here you know, also I do not see any problems here for black. I think maybe even in the long-term perspective, the knight, because of the close character of the position, could be better than the pair of bishops. More like knight bishop could be better than the pair of bishops because of the close nature of this position. That's why I think that you know, bishop takes f3, g takes f3 doesn't give anything, and e6 seems like tempting move. But anyway, after king g7 takes and f5, also black does not have any problems. And to be honest, I tried to analyze it a little bit further, and okay, everywhere black is pretty much doing well, and white doesn't have any advantage. But however, the most notably, white cannot capture on c7. There are many reasons why this fails, but one of the nicest ways to exploit that is please very strong move, rook d5 followed by rook c8, and this bishop has to go from somewhere, has to go from c7 to somewhere, and then b4 ideas are, you know, unavoidable. If let's say rook c8 would follow, then maybe bishop e5 would still sort of hold it together because there comes with the check, and you know, knight e5 rook e5 is around equal. However, rook d5 is a nice prophylaxis, preparing rook c8, and black simply wins. So it's a nice idea here for black. For instance, I don't know, f4 I try to make bishop e5 work again, bishop e5 work anyway, but rook c8, rook bishop e5, and right now very nice idea, rook takes e5, and followed by knight b4, and the game is just pretty much over because takes knight b4, king d2, bishop takes f4, rook e3, we simply trade everything, and king f6, let's say, and pawn e6 is lost. Black wins a pawn and has totally winning rook endgame. This is the point. So bishop, that's why I think that the idea of bishop f4 and bishop g3 is, you know, not a good idea. But instead, in this position, let's go back here. Here, White could have played, Teimour Radjabov could have played one move that I think that grants huge advantage to White, which is Bishop E4. And the idea of Bishop E4 is basically improving on what Bishop F4 has in mind, sort of. And the interesting part of this is that Bishop E4 has been played already. There was a game, I think 2012. I think 2012, Hess versus Kurnosov, and Robert Hess with White had a very nice position, and he was close to winning, but eventually game ended with a draw. However, he played Bishop E4 and got immediately big advantage of the opening, and yeah, Bishop E4 is by far, I think, the best move here. And after Bishop E4, Bishop H6 takes. Bishop takes C6, and after B takes C6. Right now, you know, okay, Bishop H6 makes sense, right? I should explain why Bishop H6. Bishop H6 makes sense. We need to somehow develop this bishop from F8. So it makes sense to play this Bishop H6 move, but we can already see, comparing it to a position with Bishop F4. I'll show it again. After Bishop F4, Bishop H6, Bishop H6, Rook H6. You know, sorry, Rook H6. Essentially, we are down a tempo in this position. That's why Bishop F4 is, I think, inaccurate. Bishop E4, on the other hand, is very strong. Because in the same position, we have Bishop on E4, and right now we can basically capture on C6, destroying Black's pawn structure, and right now, I think the best move for White is to play move simply Rook E3. And the idea of Rook E3 is, again, just to double on the E file, and basically maybe threaten E takes F6. And at some point, knight d4 would definitely become handy. And the thing is that bishop f5 is never really a concern, because I can just play king b3, and this group B is just one check. I can go king a3. There is no follow-up here whatsoever. Rook e1 comes in, knight d4 comes in. Position is very bad for black. And if black tries to simplify the position, bishop takes f3, then rook takes f3, rook d5, simply rook e1, and you know, f5 probably sooner or later has to be played, because otherwise white will take on ef6 and try to invade over the e file. But right now, after f5, the white rook can invade through the 4th rank, and rook a4, rook c4 ideas are pretty much unstoppable, and white should win this endgame. So I think bishop e4. Okay, one more thing about bishop e4. If knight takes e5 in this position, you know, we can simply take bishop takes b7. And this endgame, even though it may seem to be similar, you know, the previous one, like let me just show it quickly, to this position, right? Because also knights are traded. Here, in this position, the one that we had just now on the board, the difference is quite substantial, because we got to take a b7 pawn, and those e pawns are doubled, so black's pawn structure is totally destroyed, and we can simply blockade on e4, and we have free versus on the queen side, and we can easily push them forward, or even maybe win somehow a7 pawn if we can. White should win this, or at least white has, you know, big advantage that I can tell for sure. I can say for sure. So that being said, I think bishop e4 generally gives black really big problems to solve, and to be honest, I am not sure what MVL has planned here, but I don't know. Maybe next game's MVL will show what he had in mind here. However, you know, I think that white is simply much better after move bishop e4, and I do not see. At least from what I analyzed, I could not find here equality. So yeah, but in the game, follow bishop f4. Let's see what happened in the game. Bishop h6, bishop g3, and right now MVL played king g7, which is a little bit mysterious move. He should have played, you know, as I said, bishop takes f3 and just simplifying the position and with equality. After king g7, right now Teimour Radjabov played move bishop e4, which is definitely a good move. However, after knight a5, I do not see anything better than just repetition of bishop d3, knight c6 for both sides. and perhaps here white, Teimour Radjabov could have played move b4 or something like this, the same position, so I could move back here. After king g7, immediately before also was possible, just the same thing. And I think in this position, white should somehow be better. With idea is basically play bishop to play bishop e4. And I think that, yeah, that this position should be better for white. The point is that right now it's not so great to, all those lines with taking on e5 are not great because king is on g7 running into some checks. Yeah, king on g7 doesn't pretty much, is not useful at all and only helps white in this instance. So weird decision by MVL, but okay, it was rapid chess, maybe he forgot his preparation or something. I don't know. But okay, in the game for bishop e4, f5, and yeah, the f5, this was basically final mistake here by MVL, to be honest, because after f5, this endgame suddenly is totally horrible for MVL, because again, the only move was knight a5, to just to try to hang on there and not to allow destroy the pawn structure, and let's say after before look for counterplay with knight c4 or something like that, just look for active counterplay. And f5 on the other hand is simply big strategic mistake. After bishop takes c6, b takes c6, knight g5. Okay, I understand that MVL had planned f4 here, but it can be easily parried by knight g5, threatening knight d6. So that probably why black should take when pawn takes, and this endgame is suddenly nearly lost. It's if not lost, if not just lost. So I simply think that this was a huge here mistake by MVL, that he allowed to go for such endgame, and allowed white to go for enter such endgame, because right now this bishop on g4 is a big problem. It cannot quickly join the game. It's sort of trapped there, right? So the only way to bring it to the game, like, okay, the most logical, let's say, path, or let's say most human, is to play f4. There was also h4, but f4 is, let's say, making room for this bishop on f5, which is, let's say, very human, but it gives a pawn on the other hand. So bishop takes f4, rook f8, just bishop e3. There is no need to play g3 because it basically creates some idea of maybe of h4. There is no need to allow this. Right now, Teimour Radjabov presented a very nice technique, and he was winning for the majority of the game. In the end, there was only one moment where like MVL could have basically put more resistance, but he kind of collapsed. But okay, let's see what kind of strategy Teimour Radjabov showed in this particular position. Bishop e3, bishop f5, king b3, rook d5, and simply c4. Basically, white is winning here because even despite the fact that there are the opposite color bishops, which sometimes, okay, or more like is often thought that they are giving or like they should give some drawing chances. In reality, it is not so obvious, especially when there are rooks on the board. With rooks on the board, there are huge chances, of sometimes sacrificing the exchange and transferring to the endgame with bishop versus rook, wherever bishop supports passed pawns and the rook cannot do absolutely anything. There are some such instances, and here also we have to see that black pawns here are all weak. They're all very weak, and they are just gonna be falling soon or soonish. So in the game for rook d3, and right now king a4. The king feels extremely comfortable here on this side of the board because of this bad pawn structure. The king comes to a5 on the dark square. We play b3. Maybe we can play bishop c5. The king doesn't run into any single check. Can even threaten after if the rooks are traded to basically just start collecting all the black pawns here on the queen side. And the game here is pretty much over. Of course, both players fought really hard. b3, rook d8, king a5. As I said, king goes to a5, a6, bishop c5, king e6, repeating moves, or like maybe he was maybe it was time trouble or something. It was rapid game. It doesn't really matter. Strategically, white is still completely winning. There's absolutely nothing the black can do. Gradually improving the position. Rook comes maybe to h4. Bishop back to c5. Exactly, rook to h4 as I said. And g4 is possible. Not sure if this was the best play here. I would consider also a move like rook d4, trying to trade pair of rooks, maybe trade another pair of rooks, just calculating all the pawns and making sure that the black has no counterplay. G4 also is possible, followed by rook h2, but this maybe creates some chances here for black to save this game. Anyway, this we are already, I think, less interested in because here already white was winning pretty much almost everywhere. In the end, I just want to quickly show one position around here whenever, basically here wherever MVL blundered, because he played this move king d7, which is really unfortunate, because of course his position is not to envy. I'm not really jealous of black's position right now, but it definitely could have been fought a little bit longer if he played something, or if he didn't blunder simply rook takes d7, which immediately loses. So for right now, basically the only, maybe not only, but the best, let's say, defense was to play move rook f3, and of course the game went out of control for Teimour Radjabov, but out of the opening, out of basically this opening endgame, he got very big advantage, and that's let's say the most important part that I wanted to focus on in today's lecture. So in the game here, black would have still fought for a draw of rook f3 and let's say threatening rook f3 mate, while white should have played move a4 in this case, and perhaps move like king. Sorry, not king, but rook f7, just stopping, just protecting here, attacking here in this pawn. This would have given better chances to make a draw here. Still, of course, white will be trying to win this. There are certain chances taking on a6, taking on e7, but it is I do not think this is easy to win anymore here with black. Sorry, with white. Definitely Teimour Radjabov somewhere on the way missed his chance, and but the most important thing that to get such position like the following one out of the opening is, I think, a great achievement. The first strategy I would focus on, I will repeat that again. Let's say I'm not exactly sure about move g4. What I would consider here is basically trade basically one pair of rooks at least, because rook on d4, rook on d1 is very annoying. After trading one pair of rooks, this rook will be delegated to solely defending pawn on a6. Then we can slowly, activate our own rook, maybe regroup king and bishop, let's say, change the squares, let's say, after just some random analysis, let's say this. Maybe we can bring our king to c5, attacks pawn on c6, bring our bishop to a5. So let's say, I don't know, move like, I would say in play just to show idea here, and maybe bishop comes back here. And let's say bishop is okay. This already loses because rook d2 comes into play also. So black cannot just stay in place. Black cannot simply stay in place. The game should be won by white. This was, I think, a little bit better strategy. Teimour Radjabov played g4, which I think created some counter chances for MVL, but eventually, I think that after having such advantage, he should have won somehow either way eventually. But okay, so this was this game. I wanted to really quickly show what happened in the second game between those two great players, which was the same opening, which possibly will be sort of we're running out of time to discuss this game because the previous one was so interesting, in my opinion at least. This endgame, but here 97 basically is the second game that Maxime Vachier-Lagrave played, and here the idea is basically to play without move e5. basically try to play more dynamic chess. This is another strategy here by black, which is possible. Bishop f4, knight c5. You see, knight right now. Knight comes quickly to c5, attacking pawn on e4. So white doesn't have time to play the capture pawn on c7. White should play knight d2 and simply bishop d7. And black goes simply for compensation here. And this is another possible strategy here by black. It is good to I think that this could be maybe ever since this game, this could be main choice by MVL in his future games and so on. Especially that right now white cannot white can sort of capture the pawn on c7, but black will have very strong compensation after move bishop h6, and basically brings bishop to this diagonal, threatening maybe bishop takes d2 at some point, going for compensation and without kind of like having to fighting defensively for a draw with moves like f6, e5 and so on, and playing very often position with worse pawn structure. Here is more dynamic way of approaching this opening. White of course will not be capturing this pawn, and instead of happened f3 in the game, bishop g7, king c2, b5. And basically I want to show you the game up to a point where basically I think MVL had good game, had good position, but he made one mistake, and ever since basically the entire game went downhill, went south. So after bishop e3, knight a4, knight b3, a6, bishop e2 is logical. I'm not sure if this was the best move, to be honest, but okay. Knight c5 takes, bishop e5, very nice move by MVL, basically brings bishop to d6. Again, we do not play e5, we don't really need this move e5. Instead, bishop comes to e5, and we use this e5 square to bring this bishop to the queen side. So bishop e5, bishop d6. So in this position, Teimour Radjabov play move after bishop a5, a4. So I believe that in this position, even though white has some chances, white is maybe slightly better. I think that black should sort of be able to hold it if only black captures b takes a4. Of course, white is still better somewhat, but b takes a4 is sort of a must. You cannot just not take it on a4 in this position, because if you don't take on a4, you will basically suffer until the end of the game, just like Teimour, just like MVL suffered in this game against Teimour Radjabov, and it's kind of like playing on two results pretty much. Either white manages to convert or doesn't, and in the end Teimour Radjabov managed to win this. But here in this position, b takes a4 has to be played, and the explanation of b takes a4 is simple. You cannot allow white to open the a file. If white opens the a file, the game will be played basically on two results. Therefore, b takes a4 has to be played, even though it messes up the pawn structure. But right now, bishop takes a6. Let's say rook b8, rook b8, and yeah, I'm not okay. Perhaps black can play move like h4 or or h4, maybe bishop c4 at first, bring somehow the pieces together, maybe surround this pawn a4 somehow, but still move like at some point bishop d6. Sorry. In here, pawn a4 is still well guarded by this bishop on d7, and it's not clear how white can convert this kind of like quickly, or like get some clear edge quickly. So this is what basically had to be played. Instead, MVL played, I think, pretty quickly bishop d6. Maybe it was too hasty decision. After bishop takes, a takes b5, a takes b5, rook a7. White has full control over the a file. Rook comes to a1, and even though black is still kind of solid, it is definitely a very difficult position for black to play, and eventually Teimour Radjabov went on winning this game, and overall he won the match for the third place in Opera Rapid Tour. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have for today. I think all those endgames are interesting. I played them myself mostly with black. I don't think I played them too often with white. Uh, Mostly I think with some blitz games, but with black I played them quite. I mean, I played them a few times because I played Grunfeld mostly a few years ago, quite exclusively. Recently a little bit less, but still. And here, I think that those endgames are very interesting, and they lead to interesting fight. And usually white is considered to be slightly better, but black. But okay, usually in this type of, let's say, endgame, just bring it against the initial position. If king takes d1, in this endgame, I think I was also thinking that black easily equalizes, but as the theory suggests, as a new game suggests, new research, new analysis, and so on, suggests things may be not entirely easy, especially that such expert like Maxime Vachier-Lagrave has been switching between lines. F6, one game, 97, another game, so he lost in both. So it means that something's out here. Something maybe. So there could be some problems that at least maybe not even if like real problems. There could be some practical problems that could be problematic over the board. So yeah, I think that's all from me for today. I hope I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Thanks.